On my kicker tonight, I don't have very nice things to say about most, if not all, of those among our elected leaders that consider themselves young. Whether they are members of the National Assembly or senators, and whether they are allied to the Tangatanga or Kieleweke wings of Jubilee, or the opposition NASA coalition, or whatever is left of it, most, if not all, of our young elected leaders constitute a generational disaster. My argument is simple. Unlike any other generation of leaders in our history, the bulk of the current crop of young elected leaders stand for nothing specific when it comes to greater ideals of leadership and the making of nations. The current state of affairs in political parties, including the ongoing Jubilee leadership purge, have exposed our young elected leaders for what they truly are, an inconsequential and dispensable support caste. Instead of greater causes and principles, the lives of this crop of young leaders revolves around three names: Uhuru Kenyatta, Raila Odinga, and William Ruto. Take away these three names, and our young elected leaders in both houses of parliament would be totally at a loss. And that is because most of them stand for someone instead of something. I call this a generational disaster because Kenya has seen and known better elected young leaders who stood for country and greater ideals. Mwai Kibaki and Tom Mboya were industrious cabinet ministers in their early 30s, and both shaped the destiny of Kenya after independence in their respective fields. Mwai Kibaki in economics and Tom Mboya in politics. I call the current young parliamentarians a generational disaster because they are no match to the seven bearded sisters of the parliament of the late 70s, a small group of radical members of parliament that kept the authoritarian KANU executive on check and parliament accountable. The youthful MPs were mostly elected for the first time in 1979, and they included James Orengo, Koigi wa Mwere, Mwachegu wa Machofi, Chibule wa Suma, Wasike Ndombi, and Lawrence Sifuna. Of note again, some of the seven bearded sisters were younger than some of the current young elected leaders, and they stood for something. They didn't stand for someone. Then came the young Turks of the late 80s and the 90s. These young leaders were brought together not by individuals, but by great causes, political reforms, and specifically the quest for a multi-party system of government. Even though there were many political giants around them, like Masinde Muliro, Kenneth Matiba, and Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, it is their commitment to the great cause and not individuals that made the young Turks stand out. It is these individuals that proceeded to give Kenya a vibrant parliament between 1992 and 1997, with the likes of James Orengo, Paul Muite, Anyang' Nyong'o, Muhisa Kitui, Martha Karua, Rashid Mzee, and Farah Maalim, among others, looking all the part, worthy alternatives to the KANU government. First forward and draw comparisons, if any, today. When our alternative leaders, the young elected politicians, are not shooting people in pubs like wild hunters, they are invoking God's name and exhausting the entire text of the Holy Scriptures in zealous devotion to narrow causes. When they are not lining up for government contracts, they are lining up for handouts ahead of weekends of running political errands. Short-term goals is the bane of some of these present-day elected young leaders. They see politics not as an opportunity to serve, but a self-serving avenue to unaccounted wealth and unchecked power. Some of them, as a result, would not pass a random lifestyle audit tonight. Some of them, by their sheer appetite, quite frankly, represent a gluttonous future that should be avoided by Kenyans. Which is why I hold that there should be no tears for any young politician that will be stripped of their position in the ongoing leadership purge in Parliament. When they stand for nothing, then they can't stand in the way, not least of all that of their benefactors. What was given but not earned can be taken away. Without a cause, without ideals, it is not enough to be young. That is my kicker.